Good morning. It's time to call to order the February 27th, 2014 meeting of the Oklahoma City Airport Trust. We will do that. Our first item on business is to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2014 Oklahoma City Airport Trust meeting.
Move approval.
Motion to approve. We have a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And it is approved. Next up, the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. For my director's report this morning, I do want to make a terminal presentation to you. As Oklahoma City continues to grow, and in particular the business community, and as the airport's boarding passenger numbers continues to grow, it's important that the city's commercial airport continue to plan for the future. What I want to visit with you this morning about is we'll cover a little bit of background first on the previous airport renovation and some airport activity. We'll talk about some of the current challenges that we have at the airport, and we'll be talking about the proposed solution and also the implementation and first steps, and followed by the financial plan analysis that we've done. Airports contemplate expansions for various reasons, and in 1998 there was a terminal planning study that was done, and you see the picture at the top right that shows the terminal as it was in 1998. The principal reason for the study in 1998 was to address two major areas that needed improvement. Functional areas of the airport needed to be improved, and lots of areas made larger for the passenger community, such as baggage claim and the gate areas, and in particular the concourse. Equally important was to update the airport in an aesthetic way. You know the terminal was completed in 2006. And the important thing here is the terminal project expanded really just the footprint of the terminal, but it only added one additional gate. And you see the terminal in the middle picture as it is today. What we're concerned about going forward is the issue of addressing gate capacity. So when the terminal did expand, we went from 16 to 17 gates. Anticipating the growth, the 1998 study and the resulting design for the previous renovation also included a 35% design going forward for another concourse that would mirror the west concourse to the east. And we found after the renovation was complete that airport functions were still out of sync in somewhat, and after TSA came on board and after 9/11, the new concourse just did not fit very well with the security that we had come to be accustomed to. So we updated a terminal plan in 2011, and that covered the terminal expansion with regard to security, also included a centralized security checkpoint, and included some cargo operations, and you see the bottom picture to the right is what we're planning for the future. We have 5 mainline carriers at Will Rogers and 1 ultra-low-fare carrier, which is Allegiant. And again, the terminal complex we're living in today was designed over 15 years ago, and the airline industry and TSA has changed in that amount of time dramatically, and that affects how the building flows with regard to passenger. We average about 12,000 travelers per day. We also average about 2,000 meters and greeters and people who conduct business at the airport. And over the past few years, the trend for new and enhanced air service continues to grow. We're still mindful of the new convention center, which is planned for Oklahoma City, and we know that that will increase convention and tourism throughout the airport, and we are hopeful that a byproduct of that convention center will be more nonstops. So as the business environment in Oklahoma City continues to flourish, we need to plan to meet the growing air service demands to support economic development, tourism, and convention business. We are 88% committed on our leased gates, so we have only 2 gates that are currently not leased, and you see these here. The circle of the jet bridge and the gate on the north side of the concourse is a restricted gate only to a regional jet, so only small air carriers can use that particular jet bridge. Now, the circle on the bottom right, that's actually a mainline gate, and that's our only full-service gate area that we have now, and that's comparable to a Boeing 737 or an MD-80 that can use that particular gate. We have Gate 1, which is an airport gate. It's always been reserved for airport use, and that's the red gate that you see on the end of the concourse. We have a large amount of mechanical and medical and, in particular, weather diverts. We're a primary divert airport for Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and we have a lot of charters that occur at the airport throughout the year. So we need that gate number 1 in order to respond to those demands. It's interesting, we looked at an old lease a few years ago, actually in 1974, that we were going through some documents and we saw that the bond financing for that facility had a feasibility study that showed that in 1974 we had 12 gates at Will Rogers World Airport. So in a little over 40 years, we've only added 5 gates at Will Rogers. Moving to some of the current challenges that we have, enplanements have been growing and the airlines have responded. Just in 2013 alone, United Airlines began service to Cleveland, Southwest began service to Atlanta, and Allegiant last November started service to Orlando Sanford. So we have about 1.85 million boarding passengers a year that come through Will Rogers. This is the highest number that we've had before in past years. In 2009, we had an anomaly with ExpressJet and some other air carriers where we were a little bit higher for a short period of time, but we throw that out. So in all, about 3.7 million passengers go through the airport each year. Our boarding passenger trend is expected to continue upward at approximately 1.6% growth rate per year, and this has been consistent over the last 10 years. When you look at the graph, you can see that we go back all the way to 2000, and we have had a couple of downturns. 9/11 was one for sure, and then in 2009 and 2010 we had the high jet fuel price crisis followed by the recession. But every time we've come back and kept that 1.6% growth rate. This is a snapshot in time, but unlike other airports that are similar to us, small hub airports, and also some medium hub airports that are a little larger than us as far as boarding passengers, airlines have been adding capacity at Will Rogers. You can see that Oklahoma City and Louisville are up, but a lot of comparable airports are still down significantly on capacity. So airlines are very bullish on Oklahoma City. When we look,
Mark,
yes, sir.
SDF is Louisville?
Is that the one right? Yes, SDF is Louisville. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Looking at the other current challenges, we also have some potential air service announcements that could impact our facilities. What you see on the left are some existing carriers that we have been talking to about air service for some time, and also some new carriers that we've been talking to at conferences and doing targeted presentations for. And this is not pie-in-the-sky stuff. This is some low-hanging fruit that we feel is very viable in the next 1 or 2 years as airlines start loosening up their networks. There's a couple of main takeaways that I'd like for you to have in this presentation, and this is one of them, that without any facility expansion, we risk discouraging the future airline growth in the market and ultimately customer dissatisfaction. There's some challenges that we need to overcome. I want to talk about our security checkpoints for a moment. At certain times of the day, and particularly if you've flown out in the morning, you know there's a lot of congestion at the entry and exit points of our checkpoints. And this infringes on passenger seating in the concourse and also circulation throughout the terminal, both in the lobby and in the concourse. At the checkpoint, we have our queuing lines for the east and west checkpoint that sometimes even go outside the queue lines and intermingle with airline ticket counter lines. And at the checkpoints, we don't have enough recomposure area that TSA uses when passengers get through checking their carry-on bags. They have some areas there that we offer seating, but particularly at the west checkpoint, Southwest Airlines, which is our largest carrier, when they went to a new boarding procedure 2 or 3 years ago, they actually reduced the number of seats that they had in their gate area. So we have a lot of passengers that sit down in the recomposure area that TSA uses for passengers to put their shoes and laptops back together. TSA has also implemented the pre-check program. All in all, this looks like a program that's going to sustain itself. It's been well received by the public. We know that TSA is going to expand their programs and there's going to be more customer demand, especially for pre-check, but we don't have any more lanes in our checkpoints that we can create. We have only 3 on the east and 3 on the west, and now we're using actually a 3rd checkpoint for pre-check. So if we don't expand our checkpoint to be able to handle these programs and airline priorities for boarding passengers, we diminish throughput and it can result in customer dissatisfaction. This is a busy graph, but if you'll notice at the bottom we have the time of day and the 24-hour clock, and then we have on the left side the hourly rate of departing seats that are available on each air carrier. And to remind you, we have about 2 waves of departures from each gate before we receive any arrivals into Will Rogers. And you'll notice in 2008, between the times of 4:30 and 6:30 in the morning, which is our busy push, we had about 931 seats that were available, and most of those were full. In 2012, that rate went dramatically up to 1,277 seats. In other words, the airlines were expanding capacity with their seats. Now, in 2013, that dropped a little bit, but that's not really a negative. Southwest Airlines actually took one or two of their aircraft and moved it to another hourly block. So what you're seeing in this graph is we're seeing more peaks throughout the day, and the peaks are becoming more consistent. So if current checkpoint inefficiencies are not addressed, again, it's going to have a negative impact on airline growth and passenger growth. We have some other challenges also. We know there's not enough adequate meter and greeter space or amenities for our passengers or for the public who's trying to meet the passengers that come out of the concourse. You know, many times the east checkpoint is closed, and you see the meters and greeters that are congregating around the escalator at the west checkpoint, and there's no seating available. We have a cargo facility which is very, very old. It's vintage 1960s. And this is another takeaway. We've got some barriers that we've got to eliminate, and the cargo facility is a major one. We just can't throw a jet bridge on the east end of the building. We've got to eliminate the cargo building. We have some critical airport functions that need to be addressed. Our airport operations is in the cargo annex building. They've been there since the early 2000s. We've got food and beverage and retail concession support, which is in the cargo building. They really need to be in the terminal building. The YMCA Military Welcome Center is in the cargo building, and we've planned in the terminal expansion to bring them into the terminal building. Excuse me, they're in the cargo building. We want to bring them in the terminal building. And the airport police for decades have been in the basement of the terminal, and we'd like to bring them up to the second level, the ticket counter level. So all of these are in less than ideal locations for their required functions. And I know you're aware of parking garage A, elevator and escalator vestibule. This is commonly known as Station 2. We have a lot of customer complaints and maintenance breakdowns, and the escalator there is too narrow for today's luggage. And we have some office space needs. Our tenants are routinely asking us for more space. TSA would like to move their administration operations from off-airport to on-airport, and our own staff is constrained on space. Some of the other barriers other than the cargo facility that was built in 1965, we have some cargo tenants in the cargo building that need to be relocated. We've got the triturator, which is the facility that the airlines dump their lavatory carts into. We have glycol storage and dispensing equipment, ground service equipment facilities on the east side of the terminal that need to be relocated, and you see a whole host of utilities that need to be relocated or rerouted. When you look at the existing site for a terminal expansion, this is a good overview that shows you where the existing terminal is on the left, and that's where we'll be expanding it to the east. The cargo building, as you see it, is quite long. It requires demolition for us to move forward. And then in the future, we also need to demolish the existing cargo annex. So our proposed solution is for phase one to do a 3-bay terminal expansion. And by a bay, I'm talking about the distance between the stone columns that you see in the terminal, if you can recall. So I'll have a slide a little bit later on that shows what functional areas we're going to improve with that. In looking at the existing checkpoints, I thought it was important that we have a diagram that kind of shows where our checkpoints are today, illustrate more some of the issues that we're having with them. The east checkpoint is the red rectangle area that's on the right side of the screen, and this is hard to find actually for a lot of out-of-town visitors which are not familiar with our airport. And TSA, again, closes it often, and often unscheduled. So people will think they're going to the east checkpoint and all of a sudden find it closed, and then they have to turn around and go to the west checkpoint. This checkpoint doesn't feed very well. However, it has 2 of the 3 airport imaging technology machines that TSA has. There's not enough room between the document checker and the belt where you put your belongings to be screened by TSA. There's only a distance of 2 or 3 people. Now, the west checkpoint contradicts, it does feed a lot better. The queuing space is much greater from the document checker to the TSA machines, and it's mostly used by our public. However, this is the area that's way too congested. You have the meters and greeters, you have the checkpoint, and if it's the only one open, the queuing can be outside the checkpoint. And if you'll notice, the queuing here is beside the escalator. But as you know, our queuing is way into the lobby, and we only have about 8 to 10 feet from the north end of the building to where the queue line starts. So what we're proposing is a single and large security checkpoint. This would have a 3-bay expansion, again, which would add 2 new ticket counter positions. We would have a larger queuing area. This would be even larger than the east and west queuing area that we have today combined. We would have a larger customer-friendly recomposure area that would not conflict with the airline seating, and we would have additional seating and a greeting area for the public. Phase 2 of the project we're proposing is a 3-gate concourse expansion that would be also including international processing capability. And here you see the first phase. We would have 3 aircraft gates, 2 on the south and 1 on the north. And then you see that we would also design for a 6-gate future expansion, which would complete the east concourse. But we're not planning to do that. That would be based on demand, but we do want to design it so that it's ready to go. And then finally, you see the sketch on how the east concourse would round out with 9 total gates, so we eventually would have 26 gates at Will Rogers World Airport. This is a top view of aerial view that you see represented the 3-bay expansion and the 3-gate concourse, and you can see how it dramatically affects the cargo building. We superimpose how aircraft gate and jet bridges would look. You can see again the impact of the cargo building. Then we throw the 6-gate future design going further into the ramp, followed by another sketch of the aircraft and how they could be represented, and finally with the 26 gates. I mentioned the 3-bay expansion and how we would get some really improved functional areas, and in the level 1, which is the baggage claim area, you can see the bolded numbers where we increased a lot of the public circulation, baggage claim, baggage makeup area. Again, the Military Welcome Center comes into the terminal building, our concession support, as well as airport operations. And this is important because of the international processing capability. We're going to build a shell for a future customs, 15,300 square feet. It's hard to get customs into the airport, but we're trying to do that as best we can. And we believe that we do have a market here in Oklahoma City for international traffic, especially to Mexico and possibly the Caribbean. So we want to build for that. In the level 2 area, which is the ticket counter level, you see again we're increasing some functional areas with our pre-security public circulation area, the check-in queues, the counters, and in particular public circulation and the post-security, and also improving some concessions. And then again, the level 3 would be administrative support. We have to address the cargo relocation, and we had 3 options that we've talked about. And the first one is to utilize the expanded Aeroterm facility, which is the private cargo operator. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. We're also going to utilize the existing cargo annex temporarily, and we've already talked to our concession support with retail and food and beverage, and they have agreed to temporarily relocate into that area. We don't believe it's feasible to build a new cargo building. Cargo has changed over the years. There's only a few airlines that even do cargo, and that's mainly mail. There's very little freight that goes out of Oklahoma City anymore. Looking at the Aeroterm cargo facility, they have in their lease today, and we're negotiating a new lease now, where they have the requirement to expand their facility 25,000 square feet. We have been talking to them the last several years about if we ever pull the trigger on a design for an expansion to the east and a demolition of the cargo facility, that could they absorb the tenants that are in the cargo facility today, and they're eager to do so. So here's the critical next steps for us. We are working on a solicitation now for an A&E, and then go out for design. We'll have in the design the utilities relocation, and we'll also be addressing the cargo operations relocation and demolition of the large cargo building, and also possibly the annex at a future location, future time. When you look at the expansion schedule, we're looking at about 6 months' time to select an A&E, about 16 months to design the project, and this is mainly due to all the stakeholder and tenant meetings that we'll have to have with our tenants in the facility. When we did the terminal update plan in 2011, we were surprised at how many meetings that we had to have to get consensus from everyone. And then construction, we're anticipating about 24 months. We have some growth-related projects which are already in progress. The checked baggage inspection system, which actually came out of the terminal update study in 2011. We anticipate completion of that in the fourth quarter of 2015. We're also looking to restripe lines in our aircraft parking positions at the West Concourse to accommodate larger aircraft. And the consolidated rental car facility, which hopefully will be constructed by the first quarter of 2015, we're going to take the rental car counters and baggage claim We're going to disable some of those because those will all be moving to the new facility. But we do create some opportunities for office space and additional public seating and baggage claim. And of course, the first story of the two-story parking garage, all those rental cars will move out to the new facility, so we'll have more public parking. Looking at the other terminal improvements and relocations we will gain from this project, besides the enlarged checkpoint, I mentioned the Garage A elevator and escalator vestibule renovation. We also will be upgrading some electrical and HVAC systems, which are still left over from the 1960s. We want to establish a departmental command center, which would basically be an emergency operations center for the airport. We do not have one. I mentioned some of the limiting factors of facilities that we need to relocate. And also we're in design now for a full-service terminal generator, which will give us 100% power capability for the terminal building and the pedestrian tunnel. In looking at the preliminary project costs, you can see the major categories in the project scope. The areas are on the left with their corresponding amounts. We're anticipating a budget of approximately $70,200,000. Looking at the preliminary plan of finance, you have the same categories that are on the left and then the total amounts to the right. Now we're showing what the pots of money are going to be that we'll be applying for to accomplish this project. In the last renovation, we had a significant amount of FAA Airport Improvement Program grants and also passenger facility charges revenue that we're able to pay for the terminal renovation. Those same principles will apply in this renovation as well. So you can see from the FAA grants, we should get a little over $12 million is what we're programming. We will be using junior lien bonds to finance the construction project, and almost $40 million will be paid with PFCs. Just to make you understand, passenger facility charges are allowed to be used for any construction project that deals with the movement of baggage and passengers. And of course, that's all that this project does. And the remaining revenues, a little over $18 million, would be paid by airport revenues. The preliminary assumptions on the bond financing, these would be junior lien bonds that would be issued in fiscal year 2018, fixed rate 30-year bonds with level annual debt service, and the debt service would be paid with a combination of airport revenues and passenger facility charges. We looked at the financing of the debt service and how that would impact the airport, and this is a look at the existing junior lien debt service, and this is after the bonds that have been recently issued for the consolidated rental car facility. And you can see that we will be paying for the next few years about $12 million, a little more than that, in debt service. But in 2023, that drops off significantly with a lot of debt service, which is going to be eliminated off the books. When we factor in the terminal project, we can see for a few years that debt service does go up to $14 million in 2020, and then for 2021 and 22, it's a little over $16 million. But again, because all that debt service drops off in 2023, even financing the terminal project at $70 million, you can see that we're projecting our debt level service to be about $10 million a year, which is $2 million than what we're paying today. This slide shows you how the revenues are going to be paying for the terminal project, and you see this broken down in colors. So the airport revenues will be paying the blue, the passenger facility charge revenues for the last renovation and this new project will be in green, and then the yellow represents the customer facility charge, which is paying debt service as a result of the consolidated rental car facility. We were asked to show some debt service payable from airport revenues, so we show that the existing debt service, which is in green, and then we also show the future debt service. And it's all not about just debt service. We are going to get some revenues from the terminal expansion. So we'll get incremental revenue from airlines who will lease the gate space. We'll have additional TSA revenue potentially if they move their operations from off airport to on airport, and we'll certainly get more concession revenue. And if we do, if we are successful getting customs into Oklahoma City, there are also charges that we can charge for that service as well through international processing. So in summary, we're 88% committed on the gates. We only have 2 gates left, and one of those is restricted to a regional jet. We know that we're going to have continued growth in boarding passengers, and we know our community is going to continue to expand. And the airlines are starting to loosen up their network. So without expansion, we're not going to be able to accommodate them. Our security checkpoints have never met TSA standards, and we need some help there and better customer service. To accommodate the growth, we've got to get rid of the cargo building and these other facilities such as the triturator, the glycol storage and dispensing equipment, and ground service equipment. So all these barriers need to be eliminated before we can add a single gate on the east end of the building. I talked about Station 2, the parking garage A, escalator and elevator vestibule, and the key operations that we feel need to be relocated, and also the administration staff that we'd like to address more office space for our tenants and for ourselves. The airport generates a very diverse stream of revenues. Just to remind you that of all the operating revenue that the airport receives, which is about $55 million a year, only 15% of that is airline-related revenue. We have a lot of lines of business to create revenue sources. A portion of the future debt is going to be charged to the airlines and included in their rate base. And going back to the operating revenues that are available to us, we have parking revenues, concession revenues, and rental car concession and fees that will be available to pay for this project. And the last takeaway from this is that if we begin today, the earliest we'd see completion would probably be calendar year 2017. And we know how long it takes to do terminal projects because they're very complicated. It's a 24-hour facility. The airport and the trust need to be ready to accommodate that growth in the future. And that's my presentation. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions. And we are working on an A&E solicitation at this time.
Questions from the trustees?
Question, Mark, on the, looks to me like the big choke point that you can't control is the inspection screening area. And are you convinced that you have enough flexibility in that in case standards change, or in other words?
We do if we build a large checkpoint. That's the problem today is with 3 lanes that we have on the east and the west. The airlines are wanting their own priority lanes. Each airline wants its own priority lane. TSA has come out with registered traveler before, and now they're doing pre-check. And we are being saved a little bit today because we happen to still have the space that we used in the last terminal renovation when we used the auxiliary checkpoint. We were able to use that for pre-check. If we did not have that space, we would be, I think, hurting a lot more. But yes, if we build a new 8-lane checkpoint, then I think the TSA, we would build it large enough so they could put all of the new whole-body imagers that they have. We only have 3 today. They'd be able to accommodate those on every lane, and we should be able to handle any other expansion mandates that TSA throws at us.
Looks great. Great plan.
Mark, I think your presentation is, certainly demonstrates the need for the expansion. And my question is, and you've commented on it, is there any way to accelerate this? And especially in terms of issuing the bonds out in 2018, I just have some apprehension that the longer we postpone that, the higher the rates of interest and thereby the higher cost of debt service will come into play. Could you comment on that aspect?
We would be willing to accelerate this anyway. I'm very eager to get started with this because I feel like it's vitally important, and we want to be ready as soon as possible. And if we could accelerate this beyond, before 2017, I'd certainly entertain that. And we would also, when we go into design, I think we would ask our A&E to look at those possibilities as well. And certainly with our finance team and with the help of Craig Freeman and Kenny Soodle, who's already seen this presentation once, we can talk about accelerated financing. We'd be happy to do that.
Just as a curiosity, has anybody looked at paying cash for this expansion?
The airport does have a substantial amount of revenues, and we have looked at that in the past, even when we financed the last 5-story parking garage. At that time, however, interest rates were still so good it didn't make sense. We could finance it cheaper than we could use our own money and keep saving money in the interest that we had on the money that we had in the bank. That's turned around a little bit, but the airport does have cash available if we wanted to offset some of that debt.
I'd be interested in seeing what implications that would have myself. I don't know whether the other trustees have any interest in that or not, but that's just...
Well, you did. You looked about having a 3-phase approach, if you recall, the one slide. Part of it was with FAA grants, part of it was with cash, which did minimize the amount of money that was being borrowed. I don't know if you can pull the whole thing off with cash or not. I would think that would be difficult.
I would caution probably against that. When you look at even the unrestricted revenues that the Airport Trust has available now, you have to know that we have still a 5-year capital program, which is very robust. We need to have money left over for contingencies and emergencies. We already know what could happen if a tornado was to get close to us. We've experienced that. So
But the bottom line was that it was a $70 million project, $12 billion in federal grants leaves you $58 million. You don't have $58 million of cash flow to accommodate.
we'd rather not spend that, right?
You don't have it.
We have unrestricted revenues, but they are accounted for capital projects. So in that sense, no, you're right.
No, are they not obligated for other?
They are obligated, yes, sir.
Another question, I thought David would ask this. In the construction of the new wing, for want of a better term, we have a plan where you need to put 1% of your construction cost into art. Is that
Yes,
will that be accomplished?
it would.
Okay. I thought you'd jump on that, but since you didn't.
Well, I apologize for that. I just made the assumption that it would be a part of it, but I think that's kind of a minimum. We could always try to expand that percentage if the trustees thought that would be a good idea.
Any other questions? We don't take any action on this today, correct?
No, we're in the process of working with Public Works to solicit for an A&E to move forward with the project.
Thank you for your presentation, sir. If there's no further discussion, let's move on then. Will Rogers World Airport.
Under Will Rogers, item A is to approve the contract for services with Olson Associates for Phase 1 of the West Side Drainage Improvements Project for $70,000. Item B is approving the contract with Olson Associates for Phase 1 of the Concrete Apron Repair Project at Mike Monroney for $133,000. C is to approve a purchase order with Brewer Construction for installing the redundant water service line to the terminal building for $34,610.60. This is using the Trust Annual Utilities Repairs and Maintenance Contract. Item D is approving the contract with Albine and Associates, doing business as IP Design, for the crash phone replacement project for $55,100. Item E is to approve Addendum 1 for the 4 Point Sheridan Water Intrusion Project, awarding the contract to Homeco Construction Company, LLC, for $88,400. And we did receive the bonds and the contract, and so we are approving those. Item F is also approving Addendum Number 1 for the Hangar 1 Interior Rehabilitation Project, awarding the contract and the ad alternate to Homeco Construction Company for $324,990, also approving the contract and bonds. Item G is approving the plans and project manual by Guernsey and Company for the Tunnel Enhancement Project, advertising bids to be open on March 25th. Item H is approving the Supplemental Management Services Agreement Number 10 with ABM Parking Services, approving the annual budget. Item I is approved change order number 9 with Downey Contracting for the Flight Standards Building Roof Replacement and Building Repairs Project at Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center, adding $2,014.10 in 14 days. Item J is approving the plans and project manuals submitted by Frankfurt Shore Bruza for the Southwest 64th Street Replacement Project at Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center, bids to be open on March 25th. And item K is approved change order 1 with Manhattan Construction Company for the Consolidated Rental Car Facility, adding $240,205.40, adding 72 days, and establishing a $500,000 budget for the per unit price for some soil unit stabilization. That's all for Will Rogers.
Trustees have heard the items under Will Rogers. What is your desire?
The items for approval. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And it is so ordered. Wiley Post Airport and Clarence E. Page.
For general aviation, item A is to approve the non-federal reimbursable agreement between the Airport Trust and the Federal Aviation Administration to pay for the commissioning of a flight inspection for the precision approach path indicators on runway 17 left at Wiley Post. Item B is adopting the joint resolution between the Airport Trust and the city to submit grant applications for Wiley Post Airport and several projects, also submitting applications to the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission. This establishes the procedures to accept the grants, also sign the documents, and for subsequent ratification by the Trust and the City of Oklahoma City. Those are the only 2 items for general aviation.
You've heard the items under general aviation. What are the trustees' desires? The motion is second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. Moving on, lease agreements.
General.
General. There we go.
Thank you. Received Request that you receive the delinquent accounts receivable report, construction project status report, and the budget to actual report. Item B is approving the contract for professional services with G4F Secure Solutions for our supplemental security contract at Will Rogers World Airport through February 28th of 2017. Item C is approving the professional services agreement with Crowe and Dunlevy for professional legal services involving environmental issues. And last, item D is approving amendment number 3 to the construction contract with Dane Associates Electric Company for the annual electrical street lighting maintenance and repairs contract, not to exceed $300,000 or 1 year. That's all under general.
You've heard the items under general.
Move the items for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. Lease and other agreements.
Item A is to approve the supplement agreement number 4 with the passenger airline operating a lease agreement with Frontier Airlines, establishing the rates in 2014, the same as in 2013. And last, item B is approve a lease agreement with Putnam City Optimist Club to lease certain premises for sports practice fields at Wiley Post.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And is so ordered. And in paragraph 8.
Request the requisitions be approved.
Move approval.
A motion to approve. Do we have a second? Please cast your votes. And is so done. Item 9, do we need to go into executive session? Or
I believe that was requested that we do, so I think it would be appropriate.
we need to vote on that?
Yes, we need a motion.
A motion and a second?
Motion to go into executive session.
Second. Any discussion? Cast your votes. And is so ordered. We shall return. We have returned from executive session, and we're on item number 9. What is the desire of the trustees?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the tolling agreement.
We have a motion to approve.
Second that.
We have a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And it is so approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Comments from trustees? Seeing none. Comments from staff? Any comments from the public? Thank you all for attending. We are adjourned.